Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
The Celtics are getting Kristaps Porzingis back for the NBA Finals. Can the Mavs steal a win on the road in Game 1? And are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in QB purgatory?
I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
The NBA Finals kick off tonight. Celtics, Mavericks, and Kristaps Porzingis, in talking to the media yesterday, confirmed he will, in fact, suit up for Game 1. John Corrales from Locked On Celtics joins me now. And John, you've been chronicling the waiting game that the Celtics have been playing with Kristaps Porzingis. When they acquired Kristaps Porzingis, this was the question. Will he be healthy in the most important moments? What is a reasonable expectation for Kristaps in this Game 1?
Man, that's a good question because we're not 100% sure exactly how healthy he is. When he's been asked, I asked him directly, are you 100%? And he said, good question. So the answer is
that's what you want to hear.
Yeah. And when he was asked, are you running pain-free? He paused for 7 seconds and said, yes. And so that's the exact amount of time your kid waits before lying to you about brushing his teeth. And so
that's true.
I just stole my co-host joke for that one. But I don't know what to expect as far as his movement. That's going to be the question that's going to be answered right away. I think we can expect most of what Kristaps Porzingis has offered the Celtics. I don't think they need him to be 100% necessarily. They just need him not to get re-injured or suffer a worse injury. So I think if he's there as a deterrent at the rim, and if he's there as an outlet, popping out from three, out to the 3-point line, out to the free throw line, and just hitting some jumpers and not even blocking shots, just preventing some shots at the rim, making it so it's a little bit tougher to throw those lobs. If he can do that stuff, then that's enough.
And there is just the threat of Kristaps Porzingis being out there. That means something at some point. So how do you think he changes the matchup? Like, let's say he's out there for only 15 minutes. That's all he can give them. That's something, right? But the game's not 15 minutes. So how does the matchup change if he's not out there?
Well, that means Al Horford is playing his normal allotment of minutes, and he's just coming off the bench. And that is an important element. No disrespect to the guys who've come in and helped in the interim, but Luke Kornet is not a guy you want to see in the NBA Finals, right? Yeah. You want it to be Porzingis and you want it to be Al Horford. And maybe Kornet gets some minutes anyway in certain circumstances. I'm not saying he's bad, but Porzingis and Horford are better. And so if Porzingis can give you that 15, maybe 20 minutes, then you get 30, 25 minutes from Al Horford. That's fine. That is absolutely fine to me. It's less matchup hunting for Horford. It's less time for guys that may not be ready for that moment. It's shooters on the floor at your center spot versus non-shooters on the floor, which helps your offensive spacing. And that offensive spacing is part of your defense. Spacing well on offense means getting better shots, which means hitting shots, which means getting back on defense, and your defense is better with all of that stuff. So whatever time Porzingis is on the floor and however he can help with that spacing, that is important.
Is there a way you think they can play this so he's sort of just like your offensive outlet, like understanding you have to play defense, that's how the game works. But the key to me, at least from the outside looking in, is Kristaps is a pressure release valve for this offense. When the threes aren't going, you can just run something for Kristaps. He can get you a good shot. That seems to be like it could be his potential biggest value, but it also seems like the hardest thing to do when you're trying to come back from injury because you need that full dexterity.
Yeah, it's going to be like setting picks. Doing things with your, cuts, getting creative with the offense to get him into spots. And it's up to him to maybe not necessarily be fighting for position after he gets the ball. Like, one of the things Porzingis just in general has needed to do is to establish the better position early anyway. So he has to make sure that he's fighting for that position before he gets the ball. And that can come in a number of ways. That can come off of a pick once you see the defense reacting a certain way, getting to that spot before the defense can get there. But it's not going to be easy. And if you're trying to push off of that right leg, and that's not getting you where you need to go, then we're starting to turn into like decoy possibilities. Just get there and be the threat, like you said, and become more of a passer, which he's willing to do. And then that's up to the Boston Celtics to become more of a cutting team, which they haven't been. Just cut off of his post-ups and see if he can be more of a passer, and maybe that's how you take advantage of it.
Stay up to date on the Boston Celtics all year by subscribing to Locked On Sports today and Locked On Celtics on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On Sports today your first listen. Coming up, the Dallas Mavericks are road dogs in Game 1. Before we get to that, are you ready for a football marathon? Game Time makes getting NBA Finals tickets even easier and faster. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer you get to tip-off. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. They're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last-minute seats. Find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. And the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with Game Time. Download the free app, and new users can get $20 off their first purchase with code Locked On. Terms apply. Again, that's code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase with Game Time. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed. And if you're catching this episode after hearing your favorite Locked On show, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Sports today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. The college football playoff is expanding to 12 teams this year. It will now last a month. The top 5 seeds will be conference champions with 7 at-large bids, and the top 4 teams will receive a first-round bye. The games will start on December 20th, meaning that from Thursday night football on December 19th until the new year, there will only be 3 days without college football or pro football. Former NBA player Chase Budinger retired from playing professional basketball in 2017, but quickly found his next calling in beach volleyball. Now, after qualifying for the U.S. men's team, Budinger will become the first person in history to play in the regular season NBA and play Olympic beach volleyball. In what is already thought of as a weak NBA draft class, projected lottery pick Nikola Topic has been diagnosed with a partially torn ACL. Topic missed 4 months earlier this year with a knee injury before making a brief return, only to re-injure his same knee. It's unclear if he will require surgery at this point, but if he does, it could clearly affect his draft stock. After a horrendous start to the season, the Houston Astros look like they might finally be getting on the right track. That is, of course, until it was announced Wednesday that starting pitcher Jose Urquidy and Christian Javier will both miss the remainder of the season and will need surgery on their right elbows. Tommy John is a possibility for both, although they will try to avoid it if they can. The Dallas Mavericks back in the NBA Finals, and almost no familiar faces. Jason Kidd, really the only familiar face in Dallas, but still, there are the shades of Dirk Nowitzki with Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving back to face his old team. Celtics fans probably pretty happy to beat that guy if, in fact, they get to do that. So we are not short of things to talk about with this Mavericks team right now as we get into the NBA Finals. Someone who is never short of things to talk about, Nick Angstad from Locked On Mavs, joins me now. And Nick, you and John Corrales have done a great job breaking down the matchups on this. And how is Boston going to defend this backcourt?
They're going to try a bunch of things. They're going to try to play Luka one-on-one. They're going to try to stay home on the Mavs shooters and Mavs cutters and Mavs rollers and things like that. And they're going to try to make Luka beat them. That's what I think they're going to do. John Corrales thinks that they're going to do that same kind of thing. And that's a recipe that has not worked, but there are not many recipes that have worked against Luka in the past. He's seen every defensive coverage that there is, and he has beat every defensive coverage that there is. And I don't think the Celtics have that one specific unique defender like a Lou Dort that really makes Luka struggle. I don't think Jaylen Brown is that guy. And if all of a sudden Jaylen Brown really struggles against him early, what's their second option? Is it Drew Holiday? Is it Jason Tatum? Is it Al Horford? Like, honestly, like, who is the guy that is the next up if Jaylen Brown really struggles in this matchup, like, you know, Jade McDaniels did? The Timberwolves tried Anthony Edwards on Luka, and that didn't even really work. So I think that's where they're going to start, and that's the first domino for the Mavericks on offense.
Yeah, and as someone who watched Drew Holiday in Milwaukee try and guard Luka Doncic over the years, it has not gone as well as you think it might. So that's an interesting part of this. The Kyrie Irving piece. The Oklahoma City Thunder has been the proxy, right? That you mentioned that. How can Kyrie find ways, if the Celtics are going to handle him the way that Oklahoma City did, how can he still find ways to impact the game in this finals?
Yeah, against Oklahoma City, he played against Jalen Williams, who's a very good defender, long, lanky. He's going to go against Drew Holiday and Derek White, who are both all defensive players in the backcourt. Those guys are not going to be very good guarding Luka, but they are uniquely gifted to guard somebody like Kyrie. And so if he struggles the same way he struggles to score, at least the same way he did against OKC, then he needs to have double-digit assist games like he did against OKC, where he's passing, he's kicking out to other guys, he's moving around, and make the defense keep moving. Don't keep it stagnant. And he cannot fall for the blitzes, the traps, the double teams, and things like that, and just try to dribble out of it, because as soon as he gets one turnover, this crowd is going to be all over him. There was I had an Uber driver on the way back from the arena today that was, think about what you think a Boston accent is. Like, just imagine that in your head. Take it, pocket down to Haba. Like, just imagine that. And that is this guy. Huge Pats fan, thought that Belichick destroyed Brady on the way out. And he did not mince words about Kyrie. This crowd is going to be all over Kyrie as soon as he steps on the court. It's going to be huge. It's going to be loud. And Kyrie cannot fall for that trap of, I got to prove this crowd wrong. I got to go in and score 30 and hit the last shot to, you know, put the foot on the neck and do all that. Like, you just can't fall for that. And I think that that's something that their defense is really going to have to put to Kyrie, and Kyrie's going to have to make the right decisions.
This is a team that has been a super duper star, a secondary star, and then a bunch of guys who fit in really, really nicely around them, as orchestrated by, I think, number one, Luka Doncic, and number two, Jason Kidd. So if there's going to be a third guy who you go, this is, if this guy plays well, they can win the finals. Who's that third guy?
There's two guys. It's between PJ Washington and Derek Lively. With PJ Washington, he's been their third player, playing minutes wise. He's been playing a ton. He's been defending some of the best players in the other team. He kind of makes their defense work because of his versatility, switching on different guys and things like that. And also in OKC, when they did put extra pressure on a Kyrie, put through extra bodies on him, he was the release valve. He had a 29-point game in game 2 when he was standing on, then he had another 27-point game in game 3 when they won against OKC. Like, he's had some massive scoring games in these playoffs, and so he may really have to step up if that's the case. But Lively is kind of my answer because the Mavs centers are huge for them. They need to have the rim runners on offense. They need to have the offensive rebounders on offense. But if those two guys, Gafford and Lively, can't play on defense because they're chasing around these three-point shooters, chasing around KP around the three-point line, having to spread out and not being able to be near the paint where they can make the Mavs defense actually work, then it won't work. But Derek Lively is uniquely gifted in the way that he can step out and switch, and he can guard in space. And I think if he is good, if he comes out and he is very good in his role, then that's really key for the Mavericks. So it's between the two of them. Flip a coin on depending on what the Celtics decide to do on defense or offense, depending on which one's more important.
Stay up to date on the Dallas Mavericks all year by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Mavs on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in QB purgatory? Tampa Bay Buccaneers extended Baker Mayfield with a 3-year, $100 million contract extension. CBS Sports' Douglas Clawson thinks that leaves them in QB purgatory.
The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are stuck in purgatory. I mean, that's news to me, but that's what Douglas Clawson of CBS Sports says. And Clawson wrote a column about the teams stuck in quarterback purgatory, lumping the Buccaneers in with the likes of the New Orleans Saints, the New York Giants, the Seattle Seahawks, the Cleveland Browns, the Arizona Cardinals, and mentioned coming soon, the Miami Dolphins. About the Buccaneers, he said, quote, Baker Mayfield signed a 3-year deal worth $100 million to stay in Tampa Bay after leading the Bucs to a playoff win last year. Given Mayfield's up and down career, his mostly average season in 2023 before breakout performances down the stretch and in the postseason, I'd say the Buccaneers are firmly in quarterback purgatory. The way out? Well, Tom Brady isn't coming out of retirement, and neither is the 2002 Buccaneers defense, so I think this Tampa Bay team has probably hit its ceiling. For what it's worth, Ryan Wilson has the team drafting Texas quarterback Quinn Ewers in his way too early 2025 mock draft, end quote.
The thing about the contract is it's not a crazy contract. Jared Goff just got $53 million APY. That's almost as much as you're paying Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans. I would much rather have Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans than just Jared Goff. No, Baker Mayfield is not going to change your life as an organization. But as we saw last year, they can go to the playoffs with Baker Mayfield, and Mayfield was not the problem. They went and beat the crap out of an Eagles team that was just asking to get beaten, and then went toe-to-toe with the Detroit Lions, who were one bounce away from the Super Bowl last year. Baker Mayfield revitalized his career, clearly had the respect of that locker room. And while we can debate the effect of Dave Canales on his career last year and then now moving forward, 3 years, $100 million is not a crippling investment if it doesn't go right. They can move on. This is not Daniel Jones. That's QB purgatory. The Buccaneers cannot feel or should not feel hamstrung by this deal, to the point that they couldn't go, if this year doesn't go quite the way that they were planning, and draft somebody. That's quarterback purgatory, feeling locked into a player not being able to really get off of it because of financial concerns, and that player not being worth the money he's being paid. Baker Mayfield is worth the money he's being paid. Is he Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert? No, but he's not being paid by like those guys. That's not QB purgatory. And finally, Arizona Cardinals quarterback Kyler Murray said that if receiver Greg Dortch was 6'3", that he would be a top 5 receiver, which is a fine take. But also, if I ran a 4.3 40, like maybe I'd be in the NFL. If I could throw 100 miles an hour, maybe I'd be in the bigs. If I could shoot 40% from 3, maybe I'd be in the NBA. Like, what are we doing here? If you're catching this episode after hearing your favorite Locked On show, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Also, if you're a new subscriber to Locked On Sports Today, we're here for you with the biggest stories in sports every day. Coming up on the next Locked On Sports Today, who won Game 1 of the NBA Finals? So at least until tomorrow, stay Locked On Sports Today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
For more episodes of Locked On Sports Today, go to our video on demand. Click on Sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.